I'm a firm believer that you need to take risk into account when you're investing people's money. It doesn't do anybody any good if we focus on growing, 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 and we leave ourselves exposed to losing money, sometimes in areas and ways that we had not even considered before. So for
Mhm.
me, my first, when I'm meeting someone, and most of my clients are, let's say 50 and above, and they're either approaching retirement or they're in retirement. The most important thing for me is to make sure that they're going to have enough income to live for the rest of their lives, and that the assets, and usually it's 401ks, IRAs, 403bs, the assets that they're going to be using to generate that income are protected from big losses.
Welcome to Sterling Insights, Stand Out and Supercharge Your Assets, the go-to podcast for financial advisors aiming to grow their assets under management, stand out in a crowded market, and retain assets nearly forever. Are you advising high net worth clients who own appreciated capital assets? Do you want to help them sell without losing a quarter, a third, or even more of their hard-earned profits to capital gains taxes? Then this podcast is tailored for you. Each episode brings you the latest strategies and expert advice from leading financial advisors, seasoned attorneys, and experienced CPAs. Learn how to maximize your clients' wealth, minimize their taxes, and supercharge your advisory practice with actionable insights. Join us on Sterling Insights, Stand Out and Supercharge Your Assets, where you'll gain the knowledge and tools to set yourself apart and achieve unparalleled success in wealth management. Subscribe now and empower your practice for a brighter, more prosperous future.
Welcome to the Sterling Insights podcast. Today's guest is Richard Miella, a veteran financial strategist known as the Advisor to Advisors. Since 1986, he's guided attorneys, bankers, and families alike with expertise in safe retirement planning, elder care, and asset protection. He also leads the nonprofit LIFE, helping students maximize college financial aid, and serves as president of JNR Financial Risk Management. Richard, welcome to Sterling Insights.
Thank you, Katherine. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thank you for joining. I'll just kind of ask you a few questions about your experiences as you've had a lot of time in the industry. Can you start off by telling us a little bit about your journey and experiences in the financial industry and how you got to where you are today?
Sure. So I really started to think about getting into this line of work because of experiences I saw my dad having. He had a small business when I was growing up. He was working with a stockbroker to help him with his IRA, and he started to notice, as well as I, that the broker wasn't really doing what was best for my dad. He was doing what was best for himself. He was actually churning the account. So that kind of put a check in my spirit, because I said, here's my dad. He didn't have a lot of money, and this guy was taking advantage of him. So my degree from college was actually in psychology and biology. I was intending to be a doctor, but I kind of decided not to go that path. And but interestingly enough, the degree in psychology helps me a lot with this business, because money is a very emotional topic. It relates to people's hopes, their fears, their desires, how they feel about their family, their kids, their spouses, their parents, and their own successes and their own failures in the past, and what they've seen their friends go through can taint their ability to make good decisions for themselves. Most people tend to rely on their friends, at work, and those people have a small frame of reference, pretty much only themselves, maybe their family. We're able to have a frame of reference over years and years, seeing how people have done well or made mistakes. So it helps me to be a better advisor to my clients. So my background in psychology has really been helping me to help people to kind of see through the cloud of emotions, and to focus on the things that are really important, and focus on the truth of the way things are, and not their perceptions or other people's perceptions. That's why I kind of like this, because my intention in being a doctor was to be able to have a skill, help people, and make a good income. And that's pretty much
Yeah.
what this business is about: having a skill, helping people in an area that's confusing to them, and
Uh-huh.
and helping myself and my family to have a good income as well. I
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I
How did
actually,
you?
I'm
Oh,
sorry.
go for it.
I
Go.
began my work actually as a referral to someone from someone that my dad had transferred his account to. And
Uh-huh.
that gentleman, he initially worked with Northwestern Mutual Life Insurance Company. So my first real experience in the financial services business was working with insurance and disability, life insurance, that type of thing. I had an office that was affiliated with the office in the Chrysler Building in Manhattan, and my office was downtown in Manhattan, right across from One Wall Street. And just kind of a natural flow from that was that my clients were professionals that worked in the financial field, whether it was at brokerage firms, law firms, banks, insurance companies. It was all concentrated down there in the Wall Street area. So these were really smart people, smarter than me, I have to say. But they were working in the financial sector, but they were not working in the area of personal financial planning. A bond trader
Mm-hmm.
or a specialist in doing mergers and acquisitions. They know about finances, but not specifically to personal financial planning and all the things they could do to help themselves. They weren't familiar with those intricacies. So my mindset was not just on growing people's assets or helping them to accumulate money and accumulate wealth, but because I came from that insurance background, my mindset
Mm-hmm.
was really on growing their money in an environment that would also protect them from losing money. That's really and that's still kind of is the way I work today. It's not just about growth. For me, the investment side is a component of the financial plan. It's not the entire financial plan, as if they had gone to a stockbroker. So I think,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think that's what kind of set me apart for them, because most of the people that they were working with, they were all numbers people, numbers
Mm-hmm.
and math and statistics and analytics. And for me, it was more the personal side, trying to understand what was important to them, what they wanted to accomplish, and then looking at all the different products, financial products, and strategies that we could use to help them, because everybody is different. Two different people will have two different sets of goals, and their plan will be different. So that's pretty much what's gotten me to the point where am here today, because I continue to have that same philosophy now. It's just that I get more and more experience as I've met with more and more people and seen more and more people do well and more people make mistakes. That's pretty much where it came from.
Yeah. That's really interesting, and it's cool that your psychology background was able to be basically an advantage, like a differentiator.
Right.
How did you kind of get the finance background that you needed, or did you find that it came pretty naturally working with your dad and just talking to people?
Well, actually, Northwestern Mutual had a pretty good training program, and then
Okay.
as part of that, there's a financial planning designation that I pursued. It's called a chartered financial consultant. And then
Okay.
kind of an adjunct to that is what's called a chartered life underwriter. So chartered life underwriter is understanding how to use all the life insurance techniques and different products to help people with their estate planning, providing for their families and whatnot. The chartered financial consultant was additional coursework. It's kind of like a master's degree in financial planning,
Hmm.
which focused on everything from estate planning to income planning to investments and taxes and that. It's kind of like everybody knows the certified financial planner, the CFP. That's
Hmm.
usually something that's pursued by people that either come from the accounting side or come from the brokerage side. The chartered
Hmm.
financial consultant and the chartered life underwriter is pursued by people that come from the insurance side. So it's pretty much the same planning, except it's
Hmm.
focusing from different ways. That's where I got the real training. And then I worked with people that had been in the practice for a long time, and I kind of learned from them for about a year. So and before I decided to go on my own.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So you've been called the advisor to advisors, and can you tell me a little bit more about that and how you've worked with other advisors and what set you apart to earn
Right.
that title?
So like I said, the most of the people that I was working with were in the financial services business as well. So they were advising corporations and advising lawyers and advising other people. And someone that's kind of a small community. So when someone was referring me to through one of his colleagues once, and he referred to me as an advisor to the advisors, basically that I am advising the people that advise other people. So that kind of stuck, and it's kind of gave me an opportunity to develop a large clientele of people that were kind of knew what I was talking about, but had never really put it together in a cohesive format for personal planning for themselves or their family. So that's where that kind of came from.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, when you were like making the decision to go into the financial industry instead of being a doctor,
Uh-huh.
I feel like you put it very clearly of you realized you had these goals to learn a skill and help people.
Right.
How do you remember thinking through it at the time and feeling like you were missing out on being a doctor, or was it pretty clear to you that the financial industry was where you wanted to be?
It actually became pretty clear to me that I wanted to be in this area and I wanted to be independent
Mm-hmm.
after a period of time. And kind of it's borne itself out because many of the people I know that are doctors, clients of mine, my own doctors, I talk to them about their practice, and a lot of them said that they would not do it again if they had if they had the choice, just because it's become very difficult for them to give the care that they need to give to patients because of the insurance companies, because they're forced to see so many people in a day. They don't have time to really give the kind of care that they'd like to, and they're not making the kind of money that they thought they would make. Obviously, some of them do, but their lives are not what they wanted them to be. A lot of them. I'm overgeneralizing, but the people that I
Right.
for me, yes, because I'm in my own practice, I pretty much am always working. If I'm on vacation and people need me, I can pick up the phone, but I don't need to physically be in the office all the time. And at this
Mm-hmm.
stage of my career, after 38 years, once I put systems in place for people, it really becomes a matter of just monitoring and taking care of them. I kind of consider myself like a caretaker. I want to make sure
Mm-hmm.
that everything in their financial lives is working for their benefit. And I encourage them to call me if things come up, even things that that I might be familiar with, like let's say leasing a car. I don't do that, but I'm familiar enough with the process of leasing versus buying and the pros and the cons that I say to them, I'd rather that you call me and we run through the numbers and see if it's something that is benefiting you rather than you just making that decision and then it comes back to bite you later. So I like what I do.
Yeah.
It says you don't really work, you like what you do. So,
Yeah. That's cool. That's
yeah,
great. Yeah. So
that's
know
okay.
that you specialize in safe money strategies, and can you explain a bit about what that means and why it's important?
Yeah, so I'm a firm believer that you need to take risk into account when you're investing people's money. It doesn't do anybody any good if we focus on growing, and we leave ourselves exposed to losing money, sometimes in areas and ways that we had not even considered before. So for
Mhm.
me, my first, when I'm meeting someone, and most of my clients are, let's say 50 and above, and they're either approaching retirement or they're in retirement. The most important thing for me is to make sure that they're going to have enough income to live for the rest of their lives. And that the assets, and usually it's 401ks, IRAs, 403bs, the assets that they're going to be using to generate that income are protected from big losses. So we can't just keep our eyes focused on growing and not think about protection. So that's what I consider safe money strategies. And over the years, technology has gotten to the point where there are many products that are available to people that will give them the ability to grow their money, but also give them protection in the forms of, let's say, a buffer if the market goes down, a cushion, what they call a floor, which you can only go down this far and you can't go down anymore. And unfortunately, those things are not available within 401ks or corporate company retirement plans, what they call qualified plans. They're usually available only in IRAs or outside in individual accounts. And also, the thrust of the financial services industry has started to shift away from brokers that are getting compensated by commissions and over to fiduciaries get compensated as a percentage of assets that they're under management. So in that case, they have an incentive to put things in place so that the clients don't lose money, because they're not getting compensated by buying and selling. They're getting compensated based on the value of the people's accounts that they're managing. So if these people experience a 20% loss, then the firms, the investment advisory firms, are experiencing a 20% loss in income for a period of time. So they don't want that. So it puts them on the same page as the client, where it's more like a partnership. And I like that model because then everything that everyone is doing is geared towards growing and protecting rather than just growing without any regard to losing money. So that's pretty much what I consider to be safe money strategies, and it's not only about losing money in the market. There are so many other things that can come along that could rob people's retirement. What happens if people get divorced? Right? A lot of people don't plan for that. They may, divorce, they say like 50% of marriages will end in divorce. Well, 50% of those people haven't not really planned for what's going to happen if they get divorced. And you hear a lot of horror stories about people losing money. What happens if people die, if a breadwinner dies or becomes disabled? What happens if people have health problems and now they're having to spend their own money to take care of their health? So long-term care, taxes, tax penalties, there's so many things that people don't really think about that can come up in their blind spots and kind of steal their retirement from them. So from my perspective, having experience in that, I focus first on making sure they're going to have enough income to last in retirement, and that the assets that are going to be generating those income are protected in some way. And then once that's established, then we look at all those other things that could come up and harm them and put measures in place to protect them before those things come up. That's what I consider safe money strategies.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it seems very sensible to not just focus on growth, like the exciting part, but also make sure that people are protected in case something bad happens.
Exactly,
which it
right.
almost
The
certainly
safety
will.
is not exciting. It's like putting on your seatbelt in the car, right? That's not exciting, but it is exciting if you get in an accident. You don't get hurt, right? Or an airbag.
That's a great analogy. Yeah. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see people making in retirement planning?
I think the biggest mistake is people not recognizing that when they're accumulating money and they're putting money in, let's say from their 401k, it's coming out of their salary and dumping into this pot of money. We call that the accumulation phase while they're accumulating money. The volatility that they see in the stock market when they turn on the TV, that's actually a good thing for them, because when they're putting money in consistently, let's say week by week, when the market is down, they're actually buying more of the shares of whatever they're buying, so that when it comes up again, they have more. But that works totally against them once they decide to retire. Then we call that the distribution phase, right? So at that point, they're not putting money in anymore. They're either holding it and waiting for it to come out, or they're taking the money out either because they need it or because the government says that they have to take out these required distributions. And if they take this money out and they haven't accounted for that volatility in the market, they're having to take out the same amount of money, whether the market's high or the market is low. And if they have
Mm,
to take it out when it's low, those shares are never going to be there to grow back again. So I
mm,
think the biggest thing I see is people not recognizing the difference between accumulating money and taking the money, and they don't change their strategy to account for that distribution phase. It's interesting because when COVID came in 2020
mm-hmm.
was the first year that the Internal Revenue Service decided to tell people they did not have to take money out of their retirement accounts for the required distribution.
Interesting.
They put a
Mm,
pause on that. And the reason that they put the pause on it was because they recognized that the market was down so much that people were having to take money out at the worst possible time that they could.
mm,
That was part of the Coronavirus Aid and Relief Act that they put in place. So that has never happened to my knowledge before, and I don't think it's happened since. It was only during that period of time. And the IRS is not always the most benevolent, but
you could say that again.
during this period of time, though, they recognized that people would be having to pull money out at the worst possible time. So they gave them that pause. So that, I think, is the biggest recognition, is people not recognizing that they have to change their philosophy of the way they're putting their money to work after they decide to stop working, so that they're not exposed to that volatility, which can cause them to run out of money. We don't want people to run out of money when they're in their 80s and then they have to go back to work because they have no other resource.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
that makes a lot of sense.
Another thing that I've seen people really not be too keen on is recognizing how much money they need to live comfortably after they retire. Because really the planning strategy is to see what they need. Let's say somebody needs $10,000 a month coming in to be able to pay their bills and be comfortable. And they've got Social Security, two people with Social Security, maybe it's 6,000 a month coming in from that. And maybe they have a little pension of 1,000 a month. So now there's a $3,000 a month gap. So where is that going to come from? It's going to come from pulling money out of their retirement accounts, right? But if they
Mhm.
haven't really thought through how much they're going to actually need every month, it could cause them to have to pull more money out of their retirement accounts early on, which could then set them up to lose money and be out of money when they're older. So I think a lot of people, and I try and stress this with people when I meet them and we start to do the retirement planning, is really getting a focus on how much money they need every month, and not only to pay their bills like a budget, but to enjoy their life, to go out to dinner, to go on vacations, to go to shows and baseball games, things like that. So that's the other problem I see people. They don't really have a good handle on how much they need every month in order to retire. So
Yeah,
so those two
that,
things are a big deal, and I try and make sure that people focus on those things when we're doing the planning.
yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
Um, can you tell us a little bit about your nonprofit?
Yeah, so it's LIFE stands for Long Island Funding for Education, and I started that being local on Long Island. A couple of years ago, I also created another one called USA College Financial Planning to work with people around the country, so they didn't just think it was focused on Long Island. So basically, what was happening was I would be preparing people for retirement, and
Mm-hmm.
they'd make some bad choices with respect to sending their kids to college, and the kids would come out with a lot of debt, and a lot of them
Mm.
were not able to get jobs that would allow them to pay off that debt. So the parents were having to put off their retirement to be able to pay down the debt for their kids. And
Oh,
the kids were not, a lot of them were not majoring in areas that would allow them to get a good job right away. So yeah, I had one that comes to mind, someone who the daughter got a master's degree in something that was really not going to help her to get a great job. She had about $300,000 worth of debt, and she wound up having to work in Starbucks because she couldn't get another job. So those parents could not work
Wow.
could not stop working because they needed to pay their daughter's debt. I had gone out to an educational event, and one of the speakers was speaking about college financial aid maximization, basically
Mhm.
how to reposition people's financial lives to help them to qualify for more money for college. And I learned about that. And initially, I started doing that planning for my retirement clients. But then people started to ask me to do that planning for them exclusively. So it
Oh,
kind of
nice.
developed into a side practice working with it, which was helpful because a lot of people that say what they're in their 40s, they really weren't looking to do retirement planning yet, but they also were not experienced with working with a financial advisor. So this kind of gave them experience to see that it's not just about investing their money, it's about putting the money in places that's going to benefit them and not hurt them. It allowed me then to also help them to do retirement planning as well with their IRAs. So it's benefited me and it's benefited them as well. So that's where that came up from.
That's great.
And
That's
most of the
great.
planning I did, most of the seminars and workshops I did were in libraries, public libraries, and schools. That having it as a not-for-profit organization allowed me to be able to work within those environments.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Cool.
Mhm.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like a really impact focused, but also very like a very necessary addition to what you're already doing. That's
Yeah.
great.
When you think about it, other than a mortgage, paying for college is the most expensive things that a family is going to have to deal with, right?
Yeah, and yeah, I've
And
certainly had
retirement,
a
right?
lot of friends where from a financial point of view, it was not an investment. It was driving them into debt.
Exactly, right. And
Yeah.
you get a degree in art history, you're not going to do a heck of a lot, a lot with
No.
that, unless you want to be a professor, and that's going to take many more years of school to begin with. So,
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
becomes a vicious circle.
Right. Yeah. Is there anything else that you want to talk about your practice or your experience that we didn't touch on?
Not that I could think of. It's pretty much
Okay.
what I said. I go through the same pattern with most clients, unless they come to me with specific needs, like they want
Mm-hmm.
to get life insurance or something like that. But most of my clients are planning for retirement, so we go through the same process with them. And the philosophy again is to not forget about those things that could come and take their money away from them, but to make the plan cohesive so that all parts of the plan are working for the benefit rather than having one area work against them and then come back to bite them if something bad
Yeah,
happens. Yeah, other
that
than
makes a
that,
lot of sense.
yeah, I'm pretty much simple in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, great.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you so
sure.
much for taking the time.
You're welcome.
And this has been very interesting.
Good. I hope so. I hope it can
Yeah.
help other people too.
Yeah.
And you guys have been very helpful to me too. So I'm thankful for that.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Sterling Insights. Stand out and supercharge your assets, where we provide the info you need from successful leading financial advisors, lawyers, and CPAs. Your hosts, Roger and Katherine Silk, invite you to learn more about Sterling Foundation Management by visiting sterlingfoundations.com.